You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. And on today's episode of the podcast, we're going to be reviewing the fifth Test match between England and India and talking about the cancellation of the fifth Test match. Joining me to do that is my great friend, Asjad from Cricket for Us 2.0. Asjad, welcome back.
Thank you for having me once again. Very, very excited to be on the Dibbly Dobbly podcast and discuss this anticlimactic end of the series and, very good matches as well. Very good performances. So yeah, very entertaining and very excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about that, Asjad. Before we get into reviewing the series overall, let's talk about what happened at Old Trafford with the cancellation of the fifth Test match. Asjad, your thoughts on the fifth Test being cancelled, and was it the right decision to make?
In the circumstances, yes, I think it was the right decision. It's a huge thing with regards to mental fatigue, number one, and the fact that if you're scared to go out and play, right? If you've got that apprehension, you should not be forced to go and play because anything can happen with a pandemic like this. There's a lot that's happened, okay? It's mostly bad. So if the Indian players weren't feeling safe or weren't happy to go out and play, I think they should have agreed on a decision of canceling the game, no forfeit, nothing like that. Now we're in a situation where one team thinks it's forfeit, one team thinks it's canceled. They're thinking about rescheduling the final game next year, right? When India tours England once again for T20s and ODIs, which is fair enough, but it should not be part of this series. It just doesn't make sense to be part of the series because the players are probably going to be different. The conditions are probably going to be different. It's not going to be the same type of cloud hanging over the series either. So it just doesn't make sense to say, oh, our fifth game is going to happen at the end of in the middle of next year or something like that. So I think the right decision was taken. Maybe certain people and certain sections of the world took it the wrong way. In my opinion, I think there's a couple of comments by Michael Vaughan. I think he's like very disappointed in Indian cricket and disappointing fans. Like, dude, if someone got a case, if someone tested positive from the Indian side or the English side, if anyone got a positive test, would you still be saying that? Would you still be thinking, oh, the crowd is like Jarvel? What was he doing throughout this entire series? Okay, there aren't strict restrictions in the UK. So because of that, people think they can just walk off the field, they can do whatever they want. All right. And there should be stricter bubbles. Honestly, even if there is a crowd, the players and officials and the media should not be able to interact with them in any sort of way. There should be some sort of barricades, if not barricades, some sort of security, extensive security to not allow something like this to happen. It was really disappointing. So my end thought, just on your question, Jack, is that the right result was reached. I just hope that it doesn't impact the series performance because for me, India was a better team. They should win the series.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you've said there, Asjad. Obviously, the players' health and safety comes first. And it was a disappointing end to what was a great series. In some parts, both teams played well. Other parts, they played poorly. But we were robbed of a wonderful finish to a brilliant series between two brilliant teams. Now, you touched on the result, Asjad. The result remains unclear at this stage. The ICC have not made a decision on the result of this match. Should it be 2-1 to India? Should it be 2-2? Should it be a forfeit? Should India, forfeit this match? Should that be the result? Give the win to England. The last forfeiture we had in Test cricket was Pakistan. Sorry to bring it up, Asjad, back in 2006 at the Oval. We all know what happened there. It got a bit ugly and controversial in the end. We're not going to go into that because we all know what happened. Asjad, what do you think the result of this fifth Test match will be? Do you think the ICC will give it as an abandonment or a forfeiture in these circumstances?
The funny thing is, if it was any other team apart from, India, England, or Australia, I would say, oh, they're going to go forfeiture and it's going to be a 2-all series. But if history repeats itself, there are certain, not exceptions, but rules are looked at slightly differently in certain situations. So my personal opinion is it should be 2-1. That's my personal opinion. I think India was a better team. I think it should be abandoned. And I'm fairly certain there is a COVID clause within the World Test Championship to say if any side, it's not just both sides, it's if anyone feels unsafe and they need to cancel, then you cancel the game. And that's why India should win. But at the same time, if it was South Africa, if it was Pakistan, if it was any other team, there's a high chance that the rule would have been, oh, England will just the opposition have forfeited, and then we have a tied series. So my thought on it, it should be considered an abandonment with regards to particularly this series. And if they are going to reschedule it, they just have a one-off test or have another test series, right? Always great to have some sort of test cricket, but ideally this series should be awarded to India, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, obviously, as you said, the ICC have that in their playing conditions. If both sides feel like there's a potential outbreak, they can't field a team, then the match should be cancelled. So I agree with you there, Asjad. I think, in my opinion, I think this will be an abandonment. I don't think it will be a forfeiture. India wanted to play. Let's get that straight. India wanted to play this match. So did England, but health and safety comes first. And India didn't want to jeopardize the health and safety of England's players and their staff, as well as the general public as well, who were going to watch the game at Old Trafford. So we'll wait and see what happens there with the ICC. They will wait and make this decision in due course. Now, Asjad, with the cancellation of this test, there's been a lot of implications from this test being cancelled. First of all, both cricket boards have lost money. I feel sorry for Lancashire County Cricket Club. Old Trafford hasn't had crowds, not since the Ashes in 2019. They've lost a lot of money from this. People traveling to watch the game were asked to go home, basically. The gates were shut. On the morning of the match, the ECB will refund their tickets, but they won't refund their money for travel and hotels and all that stuff. I think it was a bit poor with the announcement, Asjad. I think they could have done it a day before. It was a bit inconvenient, and I think they handled that poorly. Asjad, what are your thoughts on that?
It was handled poorly. I think if we look at it, if we go back to Thursday, all right, on Thursday, India's team was tested negative. The players were tested negative, and they did another test on Friday. Now, I don't know the results of that test on Friday, but could there be a positive case that hasn't been disclosed to us, right? Which means that the first physio was tested positive. Second physio was actually in quarantine, right? You need physios to be able to proceed in a 5-test series, and you've got the last test, all right? So it's a no-brainer that it should have been decided the day before, because what's going to change between 9 p.m. on Thursday and 9 a.m. on Friday? Is it going to be, oh, everything's all good? And on top of that, we have to mention the big elephant in the room, which everyone is talking about, which is a fair point. I know it shouldn't be based on franchise cricket or anything like that. IPL, 19th September, 9 days away from the start of this test. The 100 ended, right? And then there was this test series. And it was very much the thought process that England is not going to give up on their franchise league. India is not going to give up on their franchise league. So they had to fit in 5 tests within this time period. Now, I don't think blaming any franchise league is appropriate in this situation. You could blame franchise cricket in general and say because of that we have to take into considerations how to manage tours, etc., etc. But we can't blame specific leagues within this scenario, I think. And even if it's 9 days, 10 days, whatever, Harsha Bhogle tweeted out something which made me really happy. He was like, oh, I thought I wasn't going to get any time at home. Guess I can go home and rest for a couple of days. And just imagine a person, not just him, imagine players, even though they're with their family, they're not at home. all right, a lot of them are away from their parents, right? A lot of them are pretty young as well. So just considering all of that into this situation, I think it's the best decision for all to get that break before IPL begins. On top of that, I'm really glad that some English players are like, yeah, we're not going to go. And it's not because the fifth test got cancelled. It's not a response. It's not a protest. It is the fact that it makes sense for you. Chris Wokes has played no cricket for quite some time, coming in the second or third or fourth test, if I'm not wrong.
Fourth test match he came in.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Picking up loads of wickets as well, right? Scoring a 50. And I know we'll get to it. But for him, he's played one game. We don't know how he is. We don't know how well he's doing. He's going to play county cricket. He's going to play for Warwickshire in the county championship. That's probably better for him rather than going to the IPL, bowling 4 overs, right? Batting at 7, and then being utilized sometimes and not others. The team dynamic changes like this in the IPL, but in the county championship, he's going to get the practice he needs for what? The Ashes that is coming up, which is probably still, doesn't matter about the T20 World Cup. Owen Morgan is the only one who cares about the T20 World Cup more than the Ashes. Every other English player probably cares about the Ashes a lot more. And the end result is they need to rest up. They need time at home before going to the World Cup, because everything, if you consider India, if they didn't get this break, it would be straight to the IPL, then straight to the World T20, then straight for a 2 or 3 match test series against New Zealand at home or in New Zealand. I don't know where it's going to be, but it's going to be another test series that they have to deal with. And then they could potentially get another shortish break. So, this bubble fatigue or bubble related issues is definitely a thing. And it should be given the right type of respect rather than saying, oh, they're leaving or they're not coming to the IPL as a protest or anything. I don't think that's fair on the players or any of the cricket that's going on.
Absolutely. Well, you just mentioned the IPL. It doesn't look good when a test match gets cancelled and the IPL starts a few days later. And a lot of people are going to be pointing the fingers at the BCCI and the ECB. The ECB said it wasn't IPL related. It was other things that they said were related in them making this decision. Talked about mental health and well-being, Asjad. For those who don't know, India have been in England since May, I think. May before the WTC final, because the IPL got postponed, if you all remember. So they had to go to England in May and play the WTC in June. It's now September. I think tensions and anxiety have just boiled over, and they just had enough, basically. I think the elastic just snapped. And as soon as this happened, they said, we're not risking, we've got families on tour. Some of the players have got family members. Their safety comes first as well.
Kids.
Yeah, that's right. Kids there as well. And these Indian players, Asjad, they've been in bubbles for nearly 2 years now. The IPL last year, India coming to Australia, the IPL this year, then it got postponed, WTC bubble, now this test series against England, now they're going to go back into another bubble in the UAE for the resumption of the IPL, and then a stricter bubble for the for the ICC T20 World Cup, which starts in October, November. So it's not sustainable, I don't think, Asjad. Bio bubbles, they're not sustainable. Obviously, in England last year, you had tighter bubbles, but this year the ECB thought, well, let's just relax them a little bit. The players need a bit of freedom, but they need to be responsible and they know what the guidelines are and keep safe. And I think it was Nasser Hussain who said on Sky Sports, he said, we can't treat the players like a piece of meat. We can't just keep throwing them around. They're expensive pieces of meat. They earn a lot of money, but we got to look after them. And mental health and well-being is a very important issue. And we should be thankful that the players are doing this. We wouldn't be here today, Asjad, talking about a great series. We wouldn't be here talking about cricket without the players. And I think as cricket fans, we need to remember that the players are sacrificing a lot. And you could say, oh, it's the IPL and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, the Indian team felt their safety was in jeopardy. and they didn't want to risk other people's safety just to play the last test match of the series here in Manchester. You mentioned about the 5th test match being rescheduled next England summer, Asjad.
Yeah.
Obviously, you said it will be a standalone test match. It won't count towards this series. It doesn't feel right if that's the case, takes the gloss off the series. Obviously, India come to England for a ODI and T20 tour next summer. Asjad, it just shows us that the international scheduling is a mess. What are your thoughts on that?
It's crazy. Can you imagine 2 teams have no time from now till next August? That's 11 months straight cricket. Okay. And people talk about cricket being a summer sport, but cricket is also a world sport. So if there's summer somewhere, there's winter other places. And when it's winter in England, it's summer in Australia and in New Zealand and in South Africa. So that's what happens. That's what happens with cricket. And the end result is that players will get absolutely shattered. I stayed up all night last night and I'm shattered. Look at me. All right. Look at those players. They are basically staying away from home, probably having some thoughts all about what's going on right now. And on top of that, they have to be working. They have to be playing every single series. So I'm very glad India and New Zealand, and in some sort of way, England experimented with second squads, because this might be the new thing. Rather than having an A squad, an A team, and your international squad, there might be an international squad and your preliminary international squad, or a provisional squad where you have players you're looking at, oh, maybe we can consider them in the future, so let's send them instead for that particular series, unless it's a world tournament or it's the big 3 plus New Zealand at this stage. So I think definitely this will be a change that we'll see in cricket happen in the next few years, where there won't be A tours, but it'll be similar to what New Zealand's done with Bangladesh, what Australia tried to do. I'm sorry to say, Jack. Australia tried to do with West Indies and Bangladesh, but they realized their bench is not as strong as they thought it was, especially in T20 cricket. And they saw the results 4-1 and 4-1. So, yeah, I think a lot of teams are looking at that type of setup, especially if they can, with teams like India, England, and New Zealand.
Absolutely. Well, it was a disappointing way to end the series, but that's the way it is, Asjad, I suppose. These decisions are made by people higher up than us. But it was a great series. Nevertheless, we saw some amazing cricket throughout these 4 test matches that we witnessed in this series. So let's talk about the series. Let's review the series, about both teams' performances with both bat and ball in this series, Asjad, England and India. But first of all, let's recap the results from each of the test matches. First test match at Trent Bridge, it was a draw. Joe Root was man of the match. Second test at Lords, India won by 151 runs. KL Rahul was man of the match for his century. Third test match at Headingley, England won by an innings and 76 runs. Ollie Robinson was man of the match for his fifer. The fourth test match, which was the last test of this series at the Oval, which was an amazing test match, India won by 157 runs, and Rohit Sharma was named man of the match for his wonderful century. India, well, we don't know if they won the series 2-1 but let's just say they lead the series 2-1 with the result yet to be determined by the ICC at a later date. Now, Asjad, let's talk about England first of all. Let's talk about how they performed with both bat and ball in the series. Let's start with their batsman. Joe Root, leading run scorer. No surprise, he had a good series, 564 runs in the series, 3 centuries. I thought at times, Asjad, in this series, they missed some big opportunities to score some big runs. At the Oval in particular, in the first innings, they had a lead of 99 runs. That was a golden opportunity for their batsmen like Bairstow, Hope, Malan, Burns, Hamid to score big runs, and even Moeen Ali as well. They didn't capitalise on that, and they didn't have a bigger lead against India in that first innings. Joe Root, he was the only batsman who batted well in this series for England, by far. The partnerships in this series, they only had 400-run partnerships, 850-run partnerships as well. Needed bigger partnerships, I thought. Didn't really capitalise on that. Joe Root was the only batsman who scored a century in this series. That's a bit of a concern. At times they were batting good, at times they batted poorly, the inconsistency there, and they had batting collapses. At Lords on the last day and at the Oval on a pitch that wasn't doing much on a flat deck, they got bowled out for 210. So they couldn't bat to save the test match in both of those test matches. Asjad, what are your thoughts on England's batting in this series, and what are the areas you liked, and what are the areas that they need to work on going forward?
So I'm just gonna jump to the liked very quickly before I say anything. Joe Root. Dude scored 300s in this series. You said 564 runs in 4 matches. Right?
Yep, an average of 94. Average.
Exactly. Right. It's shocking that not too long ago, everyone was talking about Joe Root not being able to convert 50s into 100s. And he's taken that to heart. I'm telling you, he's taken that to heart. And he's scored 100s in India. He scored 100s in Sri Lanka. Now he's scored 100s in England, 3 in a row in 3 matches, which is a great feat. So definitely Joe Root is the batsman I've liked. I've actually been quite impressed with Haseeb Hameed coming back into the side. We know great rise in 2016, then got injured. 17, 18, 19, horrible seasons in domestic cricket. 20, he came back slightly. 21, he was much improved as well. And thankfully got shot back into the English setup. I thought he was quite impressive. He scored 2 50s. He just plays similar to Dom Sibley, but he looks more pleasing to the eye. So that's why everyone appreciates his batting a lot more than someone like Dom Sibley, who, by the way, is still really good. He's just not in the best nick of form at the moment. Those are the 2 that I liked in terms of, how England could have improved. Every other batsman in that lineup. All right, Crawley should not have been selected, full stop. I'm a huge fan of young players being given a chance, but we've seen Zach Crawley since 267 against Pakistan. He has done absolutely nothing to warrant his place as the number 3 batsman for England. Let's compare and contrast. Number 3 for South Africa, New Zealand, Kane Williamson. Number 3 for Australia, Marnus Labuschagne. Number 3 for India, Chiteshwar Pujara. Number 3 for England, Zach Crawley. It just doesn't make sense. I think they could, and what they did in the latter half of the series, bringing in Dawid Malan, was a fair shout. I think someone like Dawid Malan would do well, and there was a lot of controversy why he was kicked out initially. All that stuff, let's put that aside. But it's good that they've got Dawid Malan, and he can score in Australia. So it's a good stepping stone from an English perspective. We can talk about Butler not fulfilling his potential since last year against Pakistan. Once again, another time where he performed. But since then, he hasn't done much in Test cricket. And it's shocking because he came back with a bang to replace Bairstow. And then Bairstow went away. Bairstow had so many matches where he was considered Pairstow, getting ducks all over the place. And now Bairstow's actually doing a decent job. I'm not saying he's doing the best job that any English wicketkeeper batsman could do, but he's doing a decent job. He's scoring 20s, he's scoring 30s here and there, and he's looked good while he's made those runs. He just hasn't been able to convert them. Unfortunately, Josh Butler is not even able to get to the 20s very often, right? Batting at number 6, number 7. Maybe he needed to play in the 4th test. I know he couldn't, but maybe he needed to bat with someone like Chris Wokes, who provides that stability just below him to kind of manage expectations a lot better. So I think England really need to work on their, not just options, but basically they need a solid base. You can't have Joe Root coming in the first 10 overs and in a lot of situations in the first 5 overs. All right. It's Joe Root who is by far your best batsman. The same thing with, well, I'll talk about India shortly, but that's the issue that India has had for quite some time as well. So I think this is very good that England knows their positives, but also they need to work on sustaining the opening partnership for long periods, which Burns and Hameed did twice after getting back together in the side. So they have the propensity to do that. It's just, will they be consistent? Because I thought Sibley and Burns were going to be England's mainstays for the foreseeable future. But the way Burns flopped completely, he was kicked out. Then Burns came back after a brilliant county season, okay, scoring multiple 50s, right? Then scoring runs against New Zealand. And now he's looked like the guy who could potentially be that mainstay opener. But Hameed coming in place of Sibley, there's still a lot of indecision with regards to the English batting. The tail, unfortunately for England, didn't fire as well as the tail has fired for England for many, many years. You have very good batsmen lower down the order. You have Craig Overton, you got Ollie Robinson. You don't have as long a tail as you used to in terms of from an English perspective. But even then, and you can probably tell me the stats a lot better than I can, but England's tail was not as good as India's tail in this particular test series, which is a shock, right? Considering India had Ishant Sharma, Jasprit Bumrah, Mohammad Siraj, and Mohammad Shami, who are genuinely, no offense to those guys, but they are genuinely not batsmen. Okay? They're genuinely not batsmen, but they're actually showing how to bat in these conditions, how to just hang about so that the other person can actually score runs. And England, unfortunately, weren't able to do that as much in this series as they have done previously. And that's, for me, I think England just needs to relook at that once again in terms of a batting perspective.
Absolutely. Well, you said about the tails, obviously, well, for England, obviously, Robinson, 45 runs, Overton, 43, Wood, 5, Broad, 4, Anderson, 4. Who else? For India's tail, obviously, Bumrah, 87, Shami, 75, Yadav, 35, Ishant Sharma, 34, Mohammad Siraj, 14, Thakur, 117 runs. So those are the stats from...
We need to just consider the fact that Umesh Yadav played one game.
Yeah, obviously. Ishant Sharma played 2, Umesh Yadav played 1. On India's side, obviously, for England, Mark Wood and Stuart Broad only played 1 test there. So we got to bear that in mind. But yeah, as you said, obviously, it was a contrasting performance from the tail enders from both teams. I think England's was a bit better than India's, but obviously, you know, they were able to score those runs at Lord's, the Indian tail. So anyway, with the Ashes coming up on the horizon, Asjad, I don't see this England batting lineup scoring big runs in Australia. Against Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, and Lyon, I don't think they'll last long. If Joe Root doesn't score big runs, then they're going to struggle. You need 400, 450 runs in Australia in the first innings. In recent Ashes series, they haven't done that in the last 2 tours. They've struggled to score big runs. Root's record in Australia isn't great. England have only scored 4 centuries in the last 2 tours. 3 in 2017-18 with Bairstow, Malan, and Cook. Before that in 2013-14 was Stokes. He was the only Centurion who scored a century in Perth. So Asjad, do England have a clear idea on what type of batsman they want to take to Australia? Because at the moment, this current crop, I don't think they're going to last long.
They have no idea. I'm telling you. Darwin Malan being pulled into the side because everyone's talking about it. Everyone's been saying, why isn't Darwin Malan batting at 3? Why can't Hamid come into the side? And I've seen this happen. I used to think this was only with Pakistan, but I've seen it happen in English cricket this year specifically, where everyone was saying Sibley's great, Crawley's great, but replace them, give them time to rest. And first test, nope, they didn't. And then the second test, they changed completely. Third test, they brought in Darwin Malan, bringing him in as the third option. So definitely, England's ideas are not clear. And that's why they've gone back to someone like Darwin Malan. It's not the step in the right direction that England probably needs, but it's a better option than having Zach Crawley play on bouncy tracks. To have someone like Darwin Malan, it's probably a better option to have Joe Root finally perform in Australia, which is something I'm actually waiting for. Joss Butler and Bairstow can be very effective down under, but the thing is, they haven't been very consistent with the red ball, which is where there's a lot of struggling from an England batting perspective. Ben Stokes, who knows if he's going to come back? Jofra Archer is not playing the Ashes this year, right? He might be able to play a game, maybe 2 next year, but he's not playing in this particular leg of the Ashes. No way that he is. So England have a lot of things to look at from a bowling perspective, from a batting perspective. I think England can probably score 300, but 400, 450, it's going to be unlikely. I don't see it happening unless, they bowl really well, unless England bowls quite well. And Ollie Robinson is a very, very good bowler. He'll be quite effective in Australia. I think someone like Craig Overton, if he gets a chance, someone like Chris Wokes, who is very highly underrated, but he has a terrible record outside of England because they tried him out and they realized he's not as effective. But I think he's learned a lot more over the past few years. So definitely a good option from an England standpoint. So for me, their bowling looks a lot better than their batting, especially for Australia.
Absolutely. Well, that's a perfect way to talk about their bowling in this series. I thought they bowled pretty well. England in this series at times, especially at Headingley, dismissing India for 78. Ollie Robinson, leading wicket taker, took 21 wickets, 2 5-wicket hauls. James Anderson, he gets better with age, doesn't he? 15 wickets, 1 5-wicket haul. There were the 2 standouts for England for me in this series with the ball. The rest struggled at times. But the one concern I have, Asjad, with their bowling attack is what we saw at the Oval in the second innings on a flat pitch. It was a bit samey. And that's the problem that they will get. Let's talk about the Ashes again. That's the problem that they will face in the Ashes. How do they take 20 wickets with an attack that doesn't have pace? They missed out Mark Wood in that 4th test. There's no Archer. There's no Stone. They're injured. And they've got some serious gas. Mark Wood's injury prone. He hasn't even played a test series in Australia. You need that extra pace in Australia, someone to bend their back and really bowl it into the surface, like a Pat Cummins, for example. Obviously, England have got Mahmood, haven't they? He did well in the ODI series against Pakistan. He's got some pace. So, Asjad, what should England do with their bowling for the Ashes? Because at the moment, it's going to be the same problem again as it has been in the last 2 tours. That lack of pace and lack of effectiveness.
The thing with the pace side of things is that England are going to take Mark Wood if he's fit. They're going to take Ollie Stone if he's fit. They're going to probably have to take Saqib Mahmood as well, based on the performances he's had. Shocking to not see him in the T20 World Cup, though. But at the same time, he's quick. He's got amazing line and length. And that's the big thing. You need a good length in Australia, and you need pace. And the only way they can get that is if they take those bowlers in. Even with that said, I think the way Chris Wokes has evolved and the way Ollie Robinson and Overton bowled, yes, they look a bit similar pace bowlers, but the length they can hit, I think it'll be more of they're more of a Kyle Jamieson kind of bowler. And the best comparison, and I think I've said this many a time, for me, Ollie Robinson is a mixture of Kyle Jamieson and Josh Hazelwood, but not this Josh Hazelwood. Josh Hazelwood for about 3-4 years ago when he's bowling 80 to 83 miles an hour, not hitting 89, 90 miles an hour consistently because he's built up loads of pace. And that's what you need, especially if you're in Australia. So if Robinson, Overton, Ollie Stone already has the pace, if some of these younger or less experienced international players can get a yard or 2 on them, they're going to be very dangerous. And I can't take out England as a potential loser in the Ashes, but I can't say that they're not going to be a winner in terms of any games because their bowling is very, very good, and they might just pull out a couple of interesting things, similar to what India did last year. I'm sorry to bring it up, Jack, but similar to what India did because no one expected that. No one expected India to lose Virat Kohli, then lose so many players, so many bowlers. They didn't have Bumrah, they didn't have Shami, they didn't have Ishant Sharma for most of that series. And the end result was someone came out of nowhere, Mohammad Siraj, not nowhere, but you know what I mean, came out and performed brilliantly. Any bowler they picked would come in and pick up wickets, maybe except Washington Sundar. Everyone else did a fantastic job. So England have to look at it. I don't know if England will go in with Moeen Ali. That's the question that a lot of people have been thinking about. Do they stick with Moeen Ali? Do they go with Jack Leach or Dom Bess? Right? But I think Jack Leach is the more obvious choice. I think Joe Root might have said that Moeen Ali is going to be England's main spinner once again. But I don't know if that's going to be the case in Australia. If it is, then fair enough, because he is the second or third highest wicket taker for England in terms of spinners in Test cricket. So he has that pedigree. Maybe he should be taken to the Ashes, but I don't know if he'll get a chance to play every single game, especially if, there are certain specific tracks which are great for spin, but not someone who doesn't tweak it like Lion, or someone who doesn't get that, that extra bounce that Lion does.
Absolutely. You mentioned Moeen Ali. Yeah, his record in Australia with the ball's not great. I think he's averaging 100. Yeah, you just touched on that. Why aren't they playing Jack Leach, Asjad? Why is that? Joe Root said, we prefer Moeen Ali as the spinner. But I heard Graham Swan once say, Moeen Ali believes that he's a batsman who bowls a bit. He doesn't generally believe he's a spinner.
Yeah.
So why do they keep sticking with Moeen Ali when he's going for runs, as we saw at the Oval, and he's not taking the wickets? And you got Jack Leach on the sidelines. He's just sat on the bench all summer and played in India. What's the point of having him in the side then if you're not going to play him? So why are they not picking him, Asjad?
The question is, why does New Zealand also not play Ajaz Patel as much as they should? It's the opposite thing. And the nice way to put it is, first things first, Moeen Ali can bat. Okay, Jack Leach is known for his one against Australia. All right, that's what he's known for. Moeen Ali is inconsistent with the bat. However, he offers you a lot in that aspect. He's a genuine number 3 who has to bat at number 7 or number 8 if he plays for England, and needs to become a bowler to be able to get to fit into the side. And he has helped England quite a lot. So I think the reasoning behind it is he's got the experience. He can bat. He can bowl. He's a very, very strategic human being in terms of the England team as well. So I'm fairly certain those are one of the few reasons why he's picked over someone like Jack Leach. But Jack Leach is pretty good as well. I don't think he is the best spinner in the world, but he's very, very talented. And there is a chance, like I said, England are going to go with both of these spinners. If they can get Adil Rashid or Matt Parkinson, that would be great. That would be great for England. But I don't see that happening.
Absolutely. With James Anderson, Asjad, when they go to Australia, he's not going to play all 5 tests.
No way.
He's probably going to play in Adelaide, the day-night test with the swinging ball, and that's probably about it.
I think he's probably going to play a few more. He's going to get at least a couple of games in him. And the reason is because James Anderson, doesn't matter he's 39 or 49 or 29, he hasn't had the best record in Australia. He's going to want to change that. He's going to want to, and we've seen it develop. If you look at his career in the first 9 years of his career, from 2002 to 2011, and now from 2011 to 2021, the disparity is crazy. He's become such a better bowler within the last 10 years that I wouldn't put it against him. I wouldn't go against him to say, oh, he's going to do terribly in Australia. He's still got something in him. If you saw this particular series, he got his pace up to 87, 88 miles an hour a couple of times as well. You don't expect that from James Anderson. You don't expect it at all. So if he's getting into that kind of grip within his performances, I think he's looking to perform well in Australia, because in his way, and if you look at his stats, Australia is one of the few places, Australia and India, but in India, he performed really well when they went to India this time around. Even if he didn't get loads and loads of wickets, he troubled the batsman like crazy. All right. So I think he's going to want to change the perception that, oh, he's not a bowler who can play in Australia.
Absolutely. So a lot of questions for England to answer ahead of that Ashes series in December. But overall, Asjad, how did you think England, if you had to give them a rating out of 10, what would you give England for this series out of 10?
4.
And
the reasoning is, yeah, of course. And the reasoning is because, yes, they lost a few players. They lost 2 to 3 players that were going to be, pretty important to them. But even then, they didn't step up. Okay. They didn't step up as much as I would have liked. As I talked about it, we saw Robinson, Root, Hamid, and then glimpses of Anderson and everyone else. So together, to me, 4 rating is about standard with regards to what England did in this particular series.
Absolutely. My rating for them is probably a 3, I think. Besides Joe Root, the batting was poor. And the bowling, besides Robinson and Anderson, was good, but after that was poor. And they missed opportunities with the ball and the bat in this series. So I'll probably give them a 3 for this series. They could have done better, but they've got a lot of work to do if they want to win the Ashes in Australia. later on this year. Let's talk about India, Asjad. Let's talk about their batting and bowling performances in this series. Let's start with the batsman, Rohit Sharma, no surprise, leading run scorer, 368 runs.
Hold on, Jack. Hold on, Jack. I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt here. Yes, a surprise. No one thought he was going to score runs outside India. No one had any inkling of the Rohit Sharma we were going to see in England in this particular series, because everyone was talking about it. Rohit Sharma can't score outside India in Test cricket. He has his disparity was 20, an average of 20 outside India, and an average of 60 or 70 in India. So the thought process was exactly that he wasn't going to get any runs. But in terms of the player he is, there was no surprise that he was going to try and find a way to discourage that thought process. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought I just mentioned that because okay. Rohit Sharma was amazing in this series. The openers for India were just, honestly, didn't expect it, and they did great.
Absolutely. And they did. Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul, the opening partnership was excellent. They played their roles well for the team. Rahane was a disappointing factor for India, out of form, out of touch. Pujara looked out of touch, but there was a different Pujara in the last two test matches. All of a sudden, he was different, looking to score and being aggressive. Virat Kohli, he scored a few 50s. He scored, a couple of 50s in the series. His highest score was 55, averaging 31, so not quite at his best. But he played some good knocks for India in this series. And I thought their batting at times was good, just like England, a bit inconsistent at times. Headingley, obviously 78 all out, was disappointing. But I thought they did well to fight back with the bat, especially at the Oval. Asjad, your thoughts on India's batting in this series? What did you like, and what can they get better at?
What they can get better at, and I'm sorry I go off topic and on a different tangent, but that middle order is a grave disappointment for a side who has one of probably the best middle order. They haven't performed as well as the potential that they have. You talked about Ajinkya Rahane. Ajinkya Rahane has scored 100 in Australia, and I can't remember any other thing that he's done apart from maybe try and save that game in Australia and try and save this game where he made that 61 or 60 odd against England. But in both of those situations, he just batted. It didn't look good. He didn't look comfortable at the crease whatsoever. We saw Cheteshwar Pujara, a different Cheteshwar Pujara, and probably the reasoning was that in public they said, we're not leaving Pujara out, but in private they probably had a discussion to say, do you want to retire anytime soon? He's like, what? No, that ain't happening. Let me just play a different type of innings. And he played really well. Those last two test matches, he was a different Pujara, and that's the Pujara that we wanted to see. Even if it wasn't just, stone dead wall, it was also that he was actually hitting shots. He was going at a striker of 70 at one point. This is Cheteshwar Pujara we're talking about, right? So it was great to watch, but he wasn't as impressive as we expected him to be. Virat Kohli either. He scored 50s, but he's not in the best of nick. Neither of the middle order is. And then Rishabh Pant, unfortunately, he's had 150 in the series. Barring that, he's just... I get frustrated thinking about Rishabh Pant, and the reason is, why would you come down the track to try and hit a ball that's about a yard away from you on the offside and try and hit it over extra cover? This is the way he plays. This is what works for him. I get it. But sometimes it's a stupid shot. It is not a smart or extravagant stroke. Sometimes, even if he hit that for 6, I'd be like, that's not the smartest thing you could do. That's not one of the smart moves, right? But you got a 6, so obviously I'm not going to say it's a bad shot. But the end result tells you that outside off stump barrier, India just struggled with it like crazy. Apart from the openers, KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, who were the shining lights for me with regards to the batting, that 100 from KL Rahul was exactly what India needed to do, which was what KL Rahul was in single figures of like 80 deliveries in the test at Lords. And that's exactly what they needed. They needed that solid base. They needed to cover off the first session and then start batting quite well. And KL Rahul showed the quality, the way that he can bat. And it was unfortunate that it couldn't transfer to all the other batsmen. Virat Kohli tried it. He changed his technique 3 times in this series. And he was like, oh, I've countered James Anderson. It's all good. And then Ollie Robinson bowls a pretty decent delivery, which he shouldn't have played at, right? He's getting that bounce. He shouldn't have played it, but he's just bowled really well. So the English bowlers tried to target Virat Kohli. At the end of the day, the middle order for India didn't fire. And the entire experience that we got from an Indian perspective was just the openers were great. The middle order didn't do much. They had some good innings, but they weren't the middle order we're hoping for. And then Shardul Thakur with 117 runs in his only game of the series. And then, you know, the tail enders coming in, chipping in at Lords. And it's shocking, but it is what it is. That's unfortunately, India's batting was not up to the mark. And on top of that, well, we're going to talk about the bowling, right? Get on, like, yeah, I want to talk about the bowling very, very quickly.
All right, then, let's get into it, Asjad. Let's talk about the bowling. Jasprit Bumrah, leading wicket taker in the series, took 18 wickets for India. That spell at the Oval. Oh, that was some serious bowling there. Those 6 overs, those 2 wickets were unbelievable. I was quite surprised they didn't use Ashwin at all in this series. Are you surprised at that, Asjad?
Yes, it makes no sense. I'm sorry, Virat Kohli said something which at the end of the day helped India, and that's why India won the game. But I still don't think Ashwin didn't deserve to play in that in that 4th game, or that third, maybe not the 3rd, but at least the 4th game. I think Ashwin should have 100% played that 4th match. He was just sitting there, he's doing absolutely nothing. And you've got Ravi Jadeja, and you've got 4 paces in the side. Yes, it's England, I understand, but Ravi Ashwin, it's Ravi Ashwin. He needed to play in this in this series. He did well in the county championship as well, the few games that he played. So he was in good form, but he just didn't get a chance. But at least I could tell that they were speaking to him in terms of strategy and tactics internally, which is good. That he's very good at that. We know from his YouTube channel, as well as whenever he speaks about cricket. He is the new Mr. Cricket, I think, in terms of the way that he speaks about cricket. Something similar to what Michael Hussey said. He said, I'm not Mr. Cricket. Muralitharan is Mr. Cricket. He just wants to talk about cricket all the time. And Ravi Ashwin seems like that type of personality to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a bit of a shock not to play him, obviously. He's one of your best bowlers. Doesn't matter what the conditions are. If he's your best bowler, bowl him, play him. They could have done that in this series. But I thought they bowled really well, especially their performance at the Oval on a flat pitch, not doing much, getting the ball to reverse swing. Jadeja dumping the ball in the roughing one side up, was brilliant bowling. And England just crumbled under the pressure. That's probably one of the best displays I've seen from India with their bowling for a while. So at Lords as well. That game at Lords was brilliant with the ball as well. They got some very good bowlers, Asjad. Bumrah, Shami, Jadeja, Siraj, Umesh Yadav, even Thakur can get a few wickets. Ashwin on the sidelines. How do you rate this Indian attack?
You know what? I'm not going to say it's the best attack, because I don't think it's the best attack in the world right now. It's one of the best test attacks in the world right now, 100%, right? The spinners, the amalgamation of the spinners and pace bowlers kind of makes it an obvious choice to say it's the best attack. I just think New Zealand does something really good with what they have, and the end result helps them out a lot. In terms of India, it's a very, very potent attack. If you think about it, you've got Jasprit Bumrah, you've got Mohammad Shami, you've got Mohammad Siraj, you've got Ishant Sharma, then you've got Ravi Ashwin, you've got Ravi Jadeja, and you have Shardul Thakur in there. That's not a bad shout. And they've got people behind him as well, which aren't in the squad at the moment, but they've got a very good pace battery, 100%. Now, if we talk about India's bowling performance, I thought India was exemplary in Lords and at the Oval that last day. You talk about the flat pitch. That's what what India's going to be used to. Decks that are not great for pace bowlers, and the bowlers finding a way to take wickets on a flat deck. Now, the big thing you mentioned, which I'm glad you actually mentioned, about Ravi Jadeja roughing that other side. We didn't see much reverse swing throughout the series. And in that final day, in that 4th test match, we finally saw it, and we saw what a different bowler Jasprit Bumrah is as soon as the ball starts to reverse. because those 2 wickets of Pope and Bairstow, I'm going to remember for quite some time, especially from an Indian perspective. I'm going to remember it for quite some time. Brilliant deliveries. Now, Mohammad Siraj didn't have the best series. Mohammad Siraj was impressive in certain areas, but he was not the best bowler on show from an Indian standpoint. And it's sad because he's very talented, but you get those games, you get those series where you're not the best or in the top 2-3 bowlers in the series, but he's going to learn and he's going to keep performing because he's very, very good. And I don't see him going anywhere. Muhammad Shami is always great. No arguments there. Ishant Sharma looked a bit worse for wear after, coming back from injury and things. But he had some good spells here and there, but he didn't have the same oomph in his bowling that we usually associate with Ishant Sharma, getting over 300 test wickets, being India's best pace bowler for quite some time. But those reins are probably going off onto maybe Shami, maybe Bumrah, maybe Umesh Yadav, the way he's bowling, by the way. Forgot Umesh Yadav. Umesh Yadav bowled brilliantly in this 4th test. He had certain phases where he started to bowl like the old Umesh Yadav, so pre-2016, but then he came back into, bowling line and length and just seaming the ball in and out just a little bit to try and take wickets. So yeah, very, very good attack. And Ravi Jadeja, I must say, I'm a huge fan of Ravi Jadeja, one of my favorite players out of the current lot in terms of the world stage. But he didn't bowl the best in this series, did he? He didn't have the best series with the ball. Didn't have the best series with the bat. He had a great series with the field. But it's Jadeja. He's going to have a great series in the field anyway. So maybe Ashwin could have been given a chance. But the way he bowled in that final day was exactly what Virat Kohli said at the toss in the 4th test match. That, we're going to go in with 4 paces and a left arm off spinner because we've got 4 right-handed bowlers bowling. And we'll get that rough. And Jadeja will bowl it and hit the pitch hard and rough up the ball and get that quick, sharp turn and sharp bounce. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, that's a really old school tactic. Teams don't do that all the time nowadays. They do go with their best spinner. It worked. The tactic worked, but I would still back Ashwin in terms of, they should have backed Ashwin. So for that reason, I'm slightly biased or, biased in the wrong direction against the Indian bowling. But again, Indian bowling lineup and the English bowling lineup were very good. But they just weren't, England just wasn't up to the mark in all aspects. India was up there definitely in this series.
Absolutely. So Asjad, what rating out of 10 would you give India in this series?
India as a whole, I would say about somewhere between 6.5 and 7. I think they had let's be positive. Let's say 7. Okay. Let's just say 7. India was not the best team, did not play the best that they could have played. There were definite phases where India looked dejected. They looked out of it completely. 100 for 0 at the start of day 5, right? But then the way that they came back, that kind of pushes things into perspective that, after getting hit and hit and hit, you coming back and fighting and winning the test match, It's similar to Rocky in every Rocky movie. That's going to be what he does. He's going to get hit. He's going to feel like, he didn't have a great match, but he won at the end. All right. And that's what we what we saw. Maybe I'll put 6.5. And the reason why I say 6.5 is because of that 78 all out, because of the way India struggled at Headingley. They lost by a lot of runs in that particular match as well. So we saw ups and downs on both ends, both teams. And whatever we say about the first test, India was in a great position. You need one session to change a match. India were 36 all out against Australia in one innings, in one match, and the next one they won. All right, you just need one innings, one session to change a game. So a 2-1 for me, a 2-1 to India is the right result with the way that they played. They played better in 2.5 games, and England played well in 1.5 games at the end of it. And we've got an interesting time ahead, what the decision is going to be about who gets to win the series, etc. For me, like I said before, 2-1 to India is what I'm going to stick with, unless I get proven wrong by Stuart Broad's dad.
Yeah, absolutely. It lies with him. He makes the final decision, being the match referee. He determines the
course.
result of this fifth test match. But it was an enjoyable series, Asjad. As you said, it had ups and downs. It was intense. It went down to the wire, especially at the Oval and at Lord's. Unfortunately, we couldn't see the finish at Old Trafford, unfortunately. But you can't change that decision. It's already been made, and who knows what test match we would have had at Old Trafford for that series. Well, Asjad, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you coming on to join me to review all things India, England, talk about the fifth test, the cancellation of that. Make sure you subscribe to Cricket for Us 2.0 and subscribe to Asjad's new channel. Asjad, what's the new channel's name?
The new channel is called Cricket and Wrestling for Us. It's going to be an interesting amalgamation of the two sports, if you can call it that. So yeah, very excited about that. Thank you so much, Jack, for having me on. Always a pleasure for everyone watching. Please subscribe, like, share all the videos from the Dibbly Dobbly podcast. Some great content, some very, very good animations as well, if I must say so myself. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man, Jack. It's brilliant. And I just want to say the Manchester game would have been rained out because it's raining today, it's raining tomorrow, and it's raining the day after.
Well, thank goodness that India decided to cancel the test. It would have been a boring draw in the end because of the rain in England. Well, thank you, Asjad, for those kind words. For those who haven't yet, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast. Like and share our Facebook page. And follow us on Twitter and now on Instagram. You can catch us there as well. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now, everyone.